Yeah, it's kind of, it's on the edge. It's a bit like me. So, let's assume that we want to represent two shopping lists, one for the supermarket and one for a gift shop. So, how do we do that? We could use an array like this, which is kind of okay, but it scales really badly. What if we had 10 shopping lists and we declared these as 10 different arrays? It's a bit of a pain, really, isn't it? So, we should put this in arrays in a hash. Because then what we can do is we can say, this is for the supermarket, this is for the gift shop, this is for something else, this is for the university gift shop, which we won't ever buy anything there. But so, hashes can contain scalars. Scalars contain strings, numbers, and references.
What's a reference?
So, this is the one we've come back to that I said we'd come back to earlier. We can only include an array in a hash by reference. What does that mean? There are two ways to create a reference. From an existing variable, or by creating an anonymous hash or an anonymous array. So, to do this with an existing variable, so we've got our shopping here and we've got our months here, which is the array and hash that we created earlier. So, to make those a reference, we put a slash at the start, and that magically turns it into a reference. That's what makes it a reference. So that's turning an existing variable into a reference. Anonymous says, right, okay, we'll do that without actually creating the interim variable. So, and what we do here, what's different? I didn't click that early enough, did I? The brackets are all different. So, for an array, we're looking at square brackets. For a hash, we're looking at curly brackets, rather than round brackets. So by using different brackets, we tell Perl that actually we want to create a hash ref or an array ref. It's magic. So there you go. So again, we're down to element brackets. So this is for accessing an individual element. You're using square brackets or curly brackets to access the individual elements. So, making our shopping anonymous arrays, this is dead easy. So we do this. So shopping 1 is now an anonymous array. Shopping 2 is now an anonymous array. So we access the elements within that by doing this. So this is familiar, this is familiar, this is the new bit. Okay? Anybody lost?
Is that a hyphen or an equal?
It's a hyphen.
It's a hyphen.
Yep.
That comma is equals greater than, wiki arrow is dash greater than.
So, straightforward? Everybody with me? Fantastic. So, if we declare, this is kind of doing it longhand. If we declare shopping 1 and shopping 2, then we can put shopping 1 and shopping 2 in an anonymous, actually it's not anonymous, it's named. So we create keys, supermarket and gift shop, and we put these shopping 1 and shopping 2 as anonymous arrays into that hash.
That's how you put arrays inside hashes.
That's how you get arrays in hashes. So does everybody follow that? Yeah? Does everybody see what's happened? I did it without my hands ever leaving my wrists. Okay? So,
These slides online as well?
yes, they are. And the handouts and the slides are on the same site. So, so we can declare anonymous arrays, shopping 1 and shopping 2, by using different brackets. So if we declare those as anonymous arrays initially, then we don't need to do the escaping with the slash to turn it into a reference. Yeah? So we're going straight into that's a reference to an array. So these are both arrays. Yeah? And then we put those straight into this hash. You with it? Fantastic. We can also,
Fix the typo on that one.
yeah, on the other one, you You can also just drop these bits at the top all together and just go straight for anonymous arrays straight into the hash. Job done. So we can also get our array back by doing this, which is nice and simple. So we're looking at the hash shopping with the key supermarket, and then we're going to turn that into an array and distract.
What? No. Where it is? It's been a row.
That is right, actually. Yeah. No, that's right. That should be $1.
Oh.
I should make a note of these errors.
The parentheses form, the percent sign form will actually work, but kind of accident.
And only in your approach.
No.
Okay. So has anybody completely lost yet? Quite possibly. Do you know, this is the first time I've looked at these slides since I gave them last year.
Well done.
So references seem complex, they really aren't anything magic. Take them apart and help yourself. So where you've got a complex data structure that you're looking at it and you think, I can't work out what the hell's going on, break it into chunks, extract the variables. So turn that nasty data structure, pull it out, change it from being an array hash to an array. Change it into being, so break it down. So where we've got our end result here, do this. Break it down so you've got each individual element. And just take the thing apart. It's not complicated. It might seem complicated, but it isn't. So, this says 10 minutes, it lies. What time is it? 22. So, there's an MTA example in the handout. So in the handout that I linked, there's an MTA example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that up on the screen and we're just going to have a look at it. If I can find it.
In the handout, is it?
It's in the handout.
No, but Jess afterwards.
Eh.
Micro USB cable.
You've got more-
Problem is, I've got this. Ah, there we go. Right, there we go. Again, the handout's got a full breakdown of explanation of all the different reference bits and pieces and talks it through in a very, very slow motion manner so that you can see what's going on. So, here's a complex example.
Oh dear, Exim.
It's just,
This
you
one
know,
made my brain melt for about 3 days before I figured out how it worked.
the more experienced developer, the more these logic shortcuts they will take. So they'll just collapse the data structures. You just won't see them. But they are simpler than they look. You just have to kind of reinflate them in your head. So let's look at this really nasty one that I've dreamed up. So I'm going to actually pull that back down because I can't see it. Right. So we have this information here. So let's talk about the protocols line. This massive blob here. Does anybody think it's confusing? Does anybody tell me exactly what all this does? How this breaks down? Shut up, you. So, if we break out the protocols, what's this? It's an anonymous array. Yeah? So we can extract that into an array. So xin protocols equals blah, and then we can pull that back in. So protocols equals xin protocols. So we changed that there. We've taken that out into a separate thing. So we're declaring it individually, and then we're pulling it back in with that. Yeah?
What do you mean by anonymous array?
If you don't give it a name,
What's called protocols?
that's the key.
That's the key of the hash.
That's the key of the.
On the right side is the value.
So this is the value,
Just a scalar reference.
and the value can only be a number, a string, or a reference. Yeah. So if we want to include an array, we have to convert that array into a reference array. So we could do that by doing this, declaring it as an array, and then putting it back in, or we can do this by using different brackets. It's declared it anonymously. Yeah. So scroll down a bit more. So we've covered all of how this breaks down. So does anybody want to tell me what this is? Yeah. So the top level here, this bit here. In fact, I'll tell you what. If I get rid of that, I can actually scribble all over this, can't I?
Yeah, not fun.
What did I do with my pen? Yeah. So this bit here is a hash. Yeah. This bit here is an array. This bit here is another hash reference. So what we've got is MTA and we've also got exim. Yeah? So here we're actually breaking this down to be exim as a hash. So that's an actual hash. This is an array. And here we've got the MTA hash, of which we're creating the exim key and putting that as a reference. Yeah? Does that make sense? This melted my head the first time I actually tried to write this. And then it made a lot more sense. So, now you can put hashes in hashes, arrays in hashes, hashes in arrays, and arrays. Arrays and fail. Yes, I'm good at fail. And arrays and arrays. Exactly the same principle is used regardless of what data type it is. It's all just references and bits and pieces like that. It's all very straightforward. Okay, so back to the presentation. That's about 1743. So that was the MTA example. Perl also has this idea of context. Sorry, making decisions. Perl has this idea of context. So it not only cares what question you asked, it cares how you asked it. And that's actually quite important. So it can have void, scalar, or list context. So this, we're not asking it to return anything. We're just calling a function and giving it something. If we want to call it and set the data to something as a result of that call, so the length function will tell us how long a string is, how many characters it is. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would return 5. Yeah?
Then how long is a piece of string? That piece of string is 5.
So count in this example will be 5. Yeah? So that's scalar context. This here is list context. So when we created our array, 1, 2, 3, so it can be a number, a string, or a reference, we can actually pull those values out again by doing this. So we reference the whole thing and we set the 3 variables. So we can pull that out. Yeah? We can also do this, which is kind of funky. Does anybody want to tell me what that does? No. It returns the number of elements in the array. Because this is in
Oh, this does because of my brackets.
Let's just quickly find out.
Somebody try that out.
no, actually that is in
That is in list context.
that is in list context. So what does that return?
It,
First
Let's
item.
find out.
The
it
first item.
assigns
Is it the
value
first?
cost value in the array,
Yeah.
and then ignores the rest.
Yes.
You can
So
combine
you're
them.
quite correct. It returns the first value of the array. So in this instance, it would be 1. Now we can also do, and this is confusing, why we're actually discussing this. So we can do my val equals array, and that is actually scalar context, because you're expecting a single value to be returned, and that will tell you how many elements are in the array, not the first element. So it's very easy to call something in slightly the wrong context and get different data back if you're not careful. So it's kind of confusing when I change the slide this, isn't it? So functions can and will behave differently based on the context in which you call them. Check the manual if in doubt. If it does something odd, check the manual, find out. Yeah? So looping, for each, while, until. So for, who's used C for loops? Yeah? You all use C for loops. Use C for loop? So this is basically straightforward. Initialization test operation. So this will count from 1 to 10. Yeah? Perl has this thing called for each, which takes an array. And we can use the range operator, which is 1.10, which does pretty much the same thing as we just discussed. Now, interestingly, in this example, we're using $_. This will set $_ for each of these. Now, this is where a lot of people start to struggle with existing Perl code, is because these magic variables have been used. And I personally hate them with a passion. I never use them unless I can absolutely not avoid it.
You need to be able to read other people's code.
Sorry?
Yeah.
You need to be able to read other people's
Yes.
code,
It's
unfortunately.
notable here that Ian programs oftentimes like a C programmer who has learned some Perl, and not
No, you do.
like a Perl programmer who also knows some C.
Yeah.
It's
So
a right
I
perspective.
personally don't like it, and I think it's a barrier and makes Perl code harder to read. So what you can do is provide a variable. So in this case, we're setting $i. So each time we iterate through this, we get $i instead of $_. So it's just slightly syntactically nicer. And we can do exactly the same with an array. So we can chuck an array in here, and it will print each element of that array for us. So it's all very good. So while, exactly the same as C-based while. And you've got your condition in the brackets there, operations within the brackets, and away you go. Until is a slight quirk of Perl, which is kind of the opposite of while. So it loops until the condition matches. So instead of looping while the condition matches, it loops until the condition matches. So it's kind of reverse while.
Somewhat philosophically here, Perl very much believes that you should be able to write it like you'd say it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
That's
unless
a way to do things.
unless is another one, which is the same as saying if not. I personally quite like, yeah, quite like unless.
Unless
So
that was my brain.
Jess doesn't like unless. So it's a personal thing. So within these things, you can do equals, not equals, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Now, with Perl, Perl does not know when you're calling a function whether the data it's looking at is a number or a string. So you have to tell it. So
It does know, but it complains.
does it?
It tries to. Well, if you tried to say.
Anyway,
equals-
moving on. So Perl needs a little bit of help. You have to tell it whether it's a string or a number. So basically, when you're doing comparisons, you have to do one or the other of these based on what kind of data you're expecting. And you should know what kind of data you're expecting before you're actually at the point of comparing it. So if value equals 0, then value 0. Then we've got if. Now, interestingly, else if has a missing e. So some languages use else with an e. Perl uses else if without. So that's fairly simple. If you've come from another language, that's something that probably catch you out. So it's
Otherwise, it follows the normal rules for compound words in English.
yes.
Of course, again, if you come from another language, this may catch.
And exactly the same as other languages you'll come across, if, else. So you've got your final dropout through the bottom, which is your actual...
Don't tell me.
Are we due finish? Oh, 10 minutes, yeah.
No, maybe 5.
Fine. Oh, I thought we were going to 6. Okay. So unless is a neat shortcut. Same as writing If value not equals to 0, then the value is not 0. So I personally like it, Jess doesn't. So unless value equals 0. So it's just, again,
So you've got unless value equals 0 or something else, and I
Yeah.
have to go, what?
so it's syntactic sugar. So
Yeah, but you can do whichever.
yeah,
Similarly for each and for are exactly the same thing.
yeah.
Perl doesn't care what you like.
Sorry, my doofer's not
There you go.
doofering. Ah. So we'll quickly run through subroutine. It's done its doofery thing and stopped doofering.
You've broken it.
Yeah, that's annoying.
Do you want a mouse?
No, it's fine. I'll just sit down. That'll be easier. Ah. Right, so modular and reusable code, writing subroutine arguments to a subroutine. So if we wanted to count from 1 to n and do it more than once, we could do some nasty copy and paste nastiness. But actually we want to define it as a subroutine called count. So in here we've got this which counts from 0 to 10. And we can call that subroutine just by calling the count function. So that's fairly straightforward, but we can still only count to 10. So we want to add an argument. So we can say count 20, and it gives 0 to 20. Again, we're talking about the default array variable, which is @_. So we can unpack that with shift. So we don't have to deal with the @_, we just call shift, and it pulls the first value off the array, and away you go. So again, we're just replacing that within the code with this, which means now we can count to whatever number we want. However, if we have more arguments than just one argument, then how do we remember which element of the array we called the function with is which, and what if some are optional, and what if actually we remove an option? So the first option that was originally there, we remove it. Now all your array has gone ka-chunk, down one element. So we use named arguments, which look like this. So this here we're already familiar with. This is an anonymous hash with max 20. So that's fairly straightforward, we've covered that already. So our subroutine call now looks like this. So $max equals args max. So args is shifting the hash ref off there, pulling that into args. Then you're looking at the max key within the args anonymous hash. Actually, it's not an anonymous hash at this point. It's a reference to the hash, which then we've got in that max variable, which we can then put in the loop. Yeah? Cool. Fantastic. And that's why references are useful. So, further reading. Manual pages. Perl Best Practices is an amazing book. Read it with a pinch of salt. Form your own opinions.
Don't read it. It's the first Perl book you ever read because your brain will explode.
Yes.
Yes.
Read the introduction that says, these are suggestions, think about them.
Yes.
Don't just follow them blindly.
To be honest, the best thing that Perl Best Practices does, and regardless of whatever language you choose to actually write in, whether it's Perl, whether it's whatever, it talks through some of layout, style, how you do function calls. It doesn't necessarily answer all your questions, but it makes you think. And that's of great value because you come away actually having read it and reviewed it and then gone, okay, if that's what it's saying, do I agree with that or do I have an alternative view? So it actually formulates your view and actually informs you better. It's actually an incredible book for that. So Strustrup, Bjorn Strustrup wrote the C programming language book. It's an amazing book for learning computer science and how to program generically. Beginning Perl is a good book. Modern Perl is also a good book, and Programming Perl are all good books. One of those is free. Is it Beginning Perl? Modern Perl. Modern Perl is free.
Available for digital download.
Yeah, so you can download it for free.
Beginning Perl, you can read about 9/10 of it on the internet. There's a person called Ovid who wrote the 2012 edition, and he put a good chunk of it onto the internet for free as well.
Yeah. So,
One thing I'll add is the coding standards of the Linux kernel are actually excellent for the same sort of reasons that
As
Perl Best
Strustrup.
Practices.
oh yeah, yeah. Go on. Go on.
It talks about code formatting and
what the correct length for a subroutine is, hint, it should probably fit when you're scoring it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it's probably too complicated and should be split into two.
Yeah.
But things like that there.
So
Also, Linux is a funny write-off.
that's pretty much it. So Q&A now. Do we have any questions? We have about 4 minutes before it's 6 o'clock, and the guy comes in here and says, "I gave you 5 minutes 10 minutes ago." So thank you to Shadowcat, because Shadowcat have sponsored us to be here to support you guys, and hopefully it's been worthwhile. Hopefully it's been interesting. And thank you to you guys for actually, spending the time to come and chat to us and learn a bit of Perl. Cool. Any questions? Fantastic. There you go.
Actually installed Perl during this.
Fantastic.
Yay!
Don't forget to fill out the conference survey for LPW 2012.
Yes.
You can attend. It's free.
It's free to attend London Perl
Well,
Workshop.
you
It's
can't
like
attend
travel.
London Pearl Workshop 2012 anyway.
No.
But you can attend
If you
2013
can,
next month.
we'll see you. We'll see you.
This
No,
month.
Yes,